Hey,
All right.
good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Water Resources Committee meeting. Uh, my name is Jason White. I'm the chairman. I want to introduce our speaker, Lloyd Raleigh. He's with Helia Environmental. Welcome, Lloyd. Also want to welcome the star of the show, Carolina Conway, our Natural Resources Administrator with the COG. Let the meeting begin.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I want to keep this kind of informal in the end. I'll talk a little bit about what I do and how it impacts water quality in different ways, and tell you a little bit about me. I got interested in water when I was really young. Um, I remember going in high school with the junior naturalists. We went to the Everglades, and the freshwater wetlands there were amazing. And yeah, just in 2010, started Healy Environmental here. I work in the Southern Appalachians and the Piedmont areas, areas in Tennessee, Georgia. Um, but most of my work is centered around, a couple hours from Asheville. Um, I did my master's thesis on brackish marshes up in the Connecticut River tidelands, and that was for the Nature Conservancy. Couple things that I think are important for this too. I wanted to talk about so when I was in Kashmir, I was working for the Kashmir government in India, and there was an area that they wanted to open up to ecotourism um, following uh, there was a period of terrorist attacks, and I remember going up in this valley in the Himalayas, and this one village, they were talking to us. We had translators, and they said that they'd lost their ability to get water easily from the river. They irrigated all their crops. Um, and we asked them what happened, and they said that the glacier was retreating so much that the meltwaters had completely destroyed their water channels, their irrigation systems, and now they were spending, instead of their time fixing their fields, they were spending their time rebuilding these channels. The reason I'm bringing that up is that kind of everything is interconnected, and I just, when I saw that, it just struck me, this sense of, everything we're doing, in the world is connected with people far away, and how it was taking them months to rebuild just to be able to irrigate their fields. And so that struck me as important. I also like snorkeling and swimming in the creeks or in rivers around here. So just something I enjoy doing. So I feel very connected to the waters around here. Um, just a little bit about Healy Environmental. I generally work with a wide variety of people, and groups, organizations, Forest Service in various states, natural heritage, um, the plant conservation program. Um, I I work with private landowners, conservation groups, just kind of a wide variety of people and groups, and also government organizations. Uh, just for funding, for technical support, whether it's the Forest Service or NRCS. Um, so I typically do management plans and baseline documentation, forest stewardship plans, forest management plans. I'm a registered forester. I'm registered to do the forest stewardship plans as well. Um, so I've done a lot of management plans around in the area. And Caroline kind of asked me, like how this might relate to water quality. And I think so. The question would be like, what do we do? And the obvious one is kind of that protecting land just automatically protects the water in a way. If you have a nice forested watershed that's not developed, so that's one thing. And if we're doing conservation easements, there's also the working with the Land and Water Fund. Often the Land and Water Fund is involved in our projects, and sometimes the whole property is protected. Other times it's a 300-foot buffer gets an easement. The state gets the easement on that, and we do a baseline documentation on that. That's kind of a basic one. And then another thing that we do with that is, sometimes the conservation organization will ask us what we want to do or what the best option is in terms of having a protected area. Sometimes they're multi-use, so versus an area that might have some forest management. And so I just did a project on the Green River um, with Conserving Carolina, and the idea was to do that where the forestry part would help out the this was in Polk County, so helping out the Polk County to develop a new generation of foresters. So part of the management plan was forestry, but another part was how do you protect the water resources of the Green River, provide for recreation and enjoyment of the land, um, protecting the rare species in the watershed and that kind of thing. Um, so that's kind of one example of the land aspect, but then there's also a lot of areas that are wetlands, and so I mean that's an amazing part about our area too. There are the bogs, the alluvial forests, the floodplain pools, the wide variety of swamp forest bog complexes. So there's a lot of habitats. There's even the riparian forests, such as the hemlock, and restoring the hemlock, treating for um, the adelgid. And so I find that managing those, it's kind of a case by case basis. So sometimes you might want to increase water flows, sometimes you might want to decrease water flows. There's always some issue. Maybe it's you want to add some prescribed fire to a bog and increase the water flows, increase the sun coming in. So there might be some management of the canopy. So it's quite diverse, and that would depend on what species are there. What rare species, whether it's bog turtle or plants or salamanders and whatnot. That just adds a whole nother dimension to management and what can be done. Um, I I also do a lot of just monitoring for conservation groups, where in the monitoring I'm able to determine what's going on out there and just let them know, kind of be the eyes and ears for the conservation group. One of the groups I work for example, is the New River Conservancy, and a lot of their easements are along the New River, and they have buffers. So having the buffers protected is something that they're really interested in, and there are a lot of issues with the buffers, especially after Hurricane Helene. But there's the whole um, invasive species thing too, with any of the habitats along rivers in this part of the world. Um, so I think that's kind of a good summary of what we do. And we do a lot of NEPA projects for the Forest Service, where we're doing the baseline information, the monitoring for rare species, and looking for invasives or any other issues before the management activities are done. That's kind of a standard legal thing. Um, and whenever I'm doing a baseline or a management plan, it includes a whole section on water resources. Everything from documenting the watershed and how people are using the watershed downstream, just kind of an educational thing. Um, just wanted to add one more thing. It's just kind of a story. My colleague Tim Simmons, he was the National Park Service hired him at Mammoth Caves in uh, Kentucky to do a management plan, and they were concerned because the stalactites and stalagmites were kind of starting to shrink. That was one of their main issues, and they were wondering why, what was going on. And going around in the caves, they were able to find these old torches from the Native Americans, and the torches were bundles of this plant that he ended up identifying as false foxglove. And so false foxglove is a plant that's fire adapted and had declined in that area. So they weren't even, it wasn't really on their radar so much. And so when he looked into it a little more, he ended up prescribing fire for above the Mammoth Cave National Park area, or the land they owned above the cave. And the reason why is that the prescribed fire historically was allowing the pH to be higher, which allowed the formation of the stalactites and stalagmites to continue. But when there was fire suppression, it actually acidified the water and changed everything. Another underground example, when I visited the Tuckaleechee Caves near the Great Smoky Mountains, when the Smoky Mountains, before they were a national park, a lot of those areas around there were logged. This is on the Tennessee side. And in the cave, you can see how it completely stained entire areas because of the sedimentation. So just a couple examples. Sometimes we can't see what's going on in the groundwater and how our management impacts the water table and the water itself, the chemistry, everything. But if you're in a cave, you kind of get a good idea of that. So I can talk more. I'm just kind of skimming the surface, but I think I just want to open it up for, kind of what your interests are. I'm not really sure who's here and what what you'd like to hear. So I don't want to just keep rambling on about stuff that might not be pertinent to what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm kind of curious, what are some like trends that you're seeing in, or I guess challenges in protecting water quality right now? And then maybe how that's changed since when you like first started doing this work.
Hmm. That's a good question. Well, I think some trends I'm seeing are that this is a positive trend, is that I'll just say, like, there's conservation groups. It seems more on their radar now. Like, I've worked on a number of baseline projects and so forth for conserving Carolina up here in the mountains, and um, they're not just protecting forest areas that are in the um, upper parts of the French Broad watershed, but for example, they've just bought some lands that are kind of old farmland type areas, and they're restoring them to try to increase the habitats, such as you know, digging out ponds and so forth, and really allowing for water retention for stormwater and that kind of thing. And those are things that I think, maybe 15 years ago, I wouldn't have seen a project like that, like an engineered project that a conservation group would really just start doing. And they're doing multiple of those. So there's that. And then this is on a larger time frame, but I think the beaver is very important in terms of what we have up here. So many of the wetlands and the way the streams would have functioned as they're as a keystone species. I think that historically there would have been beaver impacts along entire stream corridors instead of now. We're seeing them in pockets now, but the impact would have been a lot more historically before they were pretty much wiped out. So that's a big one too. And some of our management plans, we've called for bringing the beaver back. Whether it's having in some places where they're trapped, to remove, if it's like a nuisance location, that they could have a space where they could go that's in a more wild situation where they would be needed.
Yeah, beavers are awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'll open it up to if anyone else has a specific question.
Hey, I'm Natalie Jackson from the city of Hickory. Thanks for letting me sit in on the meeting. We are working on some environmental education opportunities at the city, so I would love to just hear your thoughts on what, from your area of expertise, what do you think we should be educating the next generation on? What is the messaging that we really want to make sure that we're sharing for environmental stewardship and in particular water resources? So we'd just love to hear what you think about that.
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. I think for water resources, everything kind of starts at home. I know we can talk about what's going on out in nature, but just this sense of knowing where your water comes from, your watershed addressed kind of thing, in a way. Like where what you're drinking come from, what's the impact of where the water goes when it leaves your house, and just having it really tangible, because everybody uses water in their house every day. And I think that's just the easiest first step. But then you can get into more larger issues, if you will. Larger issues being going outside and looking at what's going on in the watershed around you, out in your environment. How is the climate changing? And I think that's a delicate subject, because obviously it gets politicized, but climate can't help but change, and the environment can't help but change. So how is that impacting the community and your how would it impact your life, because it does have significant repercussions. I'll give an example with that. When I was an undergrad, I went to University of South Carolina. Went out to the biological station where a friend of mine was working with the sea turtles, and we helped volunteer on that project. And I remember we stayed at the station, and it was probably about a half mile, quarter mile maybe, but somewhere quarter to half mile walk to the beach, and then we patrol the beach looking for the sea turtles, and then we'd protect the nests. So just a couple years ago, I went back to that spot. I took a boat trip to this island with my daughter, another island, and we passed this research station on the way, and it was in the ocean, and it was probably about to fall apart. It was literally just right there on the edge of the beach, in the waves, and kind of rickety. So it was probably like the last year that you could see it. Just giving an idea of, like, whether or not, or however you see it, the climate change thing, it's like the change is happening. You can define it however you want. And I think that's a hard one to do educationally, in a way, but like there are ways to show what the impacts are without getting political. And then I think another thing is the critters. Like, there's so many creatures, aquatic creatures, that are so fascinating that I think there's a lot of opportunity there, especially hands-on stuff for kids. I don't know if there's nature centers or whatever that can take some kids out mucking around, but if there's a vernal pool, or go to a creek. One thing I like to do, there's a vernal pool right, a few miles away that I know of, and you can go there every spring and see the salamander and frog egg masses, and the hatched ones, and a little bit later. And so there, kids love that kind of stuff, for sure. And it does tie things together very well.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. I appreciate it. Took a lot of notes.
Sure, yeah, yeah. Anything else with that, or do you want to do a follow-up, or like is that enough for you?
That's good for now, but I'm going to keep your information because we are developing some programming with some partners, and it might be good to reach back out to you to speak further. So thank you.
Sure, yeah. And part of that is based on, my experience as a kid too. Like I was a junior naturalist, and we did the herping in the, spring kind of thing and all that stuff. So it can be impactful for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So what else? We just have a couple more minutes, so maybe one more question. No, that's okay too. Um, Carolina, is there anything you'd like me to talk about that would be useful, do you think? Or
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind going a little more in depth about just one of the projects you've been working on recently, and kind of what that process has looked like for you.
Sure. Well, actually, the latest one that I just finished was the Green River project. The Community Green is what it's called, and so that's It's a 500-acre project. It's funded through the well, Conserving Carolina is kind of spearheading it. They have a management agreement with Polk County Community Foundation, and the idea is to create they own the Polk County Community Foundation owns the land, and the idea is to have it as a local resource for a wide variety of things, ranging from forestry to it's right on the Green River, so a boating area where people can park and put their boat in or take it out, and also protect nature. So I did a forest stewardship plan for that. It's kind of in its iterative first stage because they want the Forest Service to fund it as a community forest. The Forest Service is really pushing this community forest idea, which is kind of a public-private partnership. And so I did one for Buncombe County. This is the one for Polk County. So maybe we'll do more. That would be the idea. And so it would be funded through the Forest Service. And then it's multi-use. So there would be the active forestry part, which the local schools would be able to do training for the next generation of foresters. For example, the plan calls for having shortleaf pine forest, pine oak forest, which also, just to tie in the NC Forest Service, they would also offer a 60% cost share for that to plant the shortleaf because its shortleaf stands have declined significantly in the area. But then there's also rare species going all along the Green River, and there's a hemlock forest along the river. Also, there are invasive species. So the management plan looks at all the resources out there, and then the first step was kind of figuring out your resource. So know your resource is the first thing, and then from that, figuring out what areas are best suited for the forest education and management part, and what areas are best suited for more the recreation and then the nature preservation part. So kind of a preserve design, so to speak.
Thanks. That sounds really interesting.
Sure.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then I'm happy to take back over. But thanks so much, Lloyd, for sharing and meeting with us. It was great to hear about your work.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody, with what you're doing. So I'm going to sign off, let you do your meeting.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone.
All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen and I can share some updates from the COG and kind of what I've been working on. All right. So first thing I want to hit on is our septic system repair program. I've talked about this in some other meetings, but just as a recap, this is a revolving loan program that provides up to $10,000 for eligible septic repairs in Burke, Alexander, Caldwell, and Catawba counties. That map you see is actually from when we did this project back in 2017, but it just kind of gives you a sense of the area that we're working with. As of today, we have 26 applicants approved this year, 10 projects completed, an additional 9 clients in the bid or repair process. But we're very excited because we actually just got more funding to do another septic repair program. This one is funded by the DEQ for Hurricane Helene recovery. So we're actually getting about 7.5 million to repair damaged and failed septic systems in Ashe, Avery, Burke, Alexander, Allegheny, Caldwell, Catawba, Mitchell, Watauga, or yeah, Mitchell, Watauga, Wilkes, and Yancey counties. It's a lot of counties. I got kind of jumbled. But we partnered with High Country COG on this one, really increasing the scope of everything that we're doing. And instead of a loan program, this is full forgiveness. And so we're excited to be able to help some more people out. It definitely helps homeowners who have septic repairs that are really expensive. And it also protects water quality and helps protect our watershed. So we're pretty excited for this to be coming down the pipe as well. Another grant I've been working on is the Tree Canopy Education Project, which is funded by the U.S. Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program for the completion of a STEM-based educational project. It's about trees, teaching kids the benefits of trees. We also talk about thermal imaging, air quality, water quality, and soil. There's a whole day just about water. Also, we talk about different careers they could have in forestry and the environmental field in general. Last year, we did fifth and eighth grade students. This year, we're doing it again, but with fifth and sixth grade students. And this is at William Lenore Middle School, Longview Elementary, and Heritage Middle School. Um, so last year, our project actually won a NATO Impact Award, and we're doing it again this year. We just completed the first phase of lessons, and so we taught about 354 students between those 3 schools and 4 different teachers. And we're going to go back in the spring and do another set of lessons and actually bring in like an arborist and someone from a nursery and some other people who have environmental careers just to kind of open their eyes to different possibilities in the environmental field. And we try to do lots of outdoor and hands-on activities. So you can see we were getting the kids outside to look at trees. They were also looking at a soil sample in that bottom photo. So it's a pretty cool project, and we've gotten pretty good feedback on it so far. I've also been doing the stormwater education lessons that I typically do. So in the last quarter, I've been to Maiden Library, Morganton Library, Hickory Day School, and Tuttle Elementary School. And so I'll bring the Enviroscape, which the kids always love, and that's a great way for them to see stormwater runoff pollution and how that works. And then sometimes we'll go out and actually look at stormwater features around their schoolyard. And so I've taught about 93 students in those months. And then outreach is another big part of what I do. So in September through December, we did a cleanup at Sawmills Veterans Park, and also we participated in the Catawba River Sweep. I know Jason did as well. Catawba River Keeper puts that on, and it's a really big event throughout the whole watershed. And just within our region, there were sites at Lake Hickory, Lake Rotis, and Lake James. I was a site captain at the Linville boat ramp at Lake James, and we had a really good turnout. That's where that top photo is from. Picked up a lot of trash. And then outreach at festivals, we were at the Granite Falls Festival on Main, the Conover National Night Out. Newton had an event called the Choo Choo and Snowman 2, which is a fun one to go to, and then the Merry Maiden Christmas Festival. So continuing to have lots of activities for kids and also adults teaching about stormwater runoff pollution and ways to prevent that. All right, so talking about what's around the corner, we're working on updating all of our stormwater management plans for all the towns that we work with. Those are due at the end of the month, and then there will be a revision process with the DEQ. We're also still working on hiring a natural resources manager, so stay tuned about that. We will be going back into schools for those tree canopy lessons in the spring, as well as continuing the normal education and outreach that's part of our program. And then we're looking forward to that Helene Recovery Septic Grant, which we should be getting those funds fairly soon. So we should have plenty to share at the next Water Resources Committee meeting, which should be in March. So just keep an eye out for an email about that once we have a set date. All right, but now I want to open it back up for questions, either about anything that I just shared or if any of you have things that you want to share. Yeah, I think Melissa, you have a raised hand?
Yes, I am sorry that I couldn't make the meeting last week for the Hunting Creek watershed meeting. Can you give me an update on that? On what that meeting consisted of, please?
Yeah. Well, so the Hunting Creek committee wrapped up. Johnny, before he left, was able to just come up with that to finalize that plan and submit that plan. And so I can share that with you if you haven't seen it. And we can touch base individually too about any questions you may still have about that project. But we did identify a lot of different sites to prioritize within that stream, and yeah, that plan has been put into writing.
Okay, all right. And so last week's meeting was just to show the final product to everyone?
I don't think we had a meeting last week,
Oh,
unless you're thinking about something else.
oh, it was on my calendar for to change it from the September meeting to December 10th. And I knew I had a conflict, so I just um
Yeah, I think Johnny probably canceled that meeting before he left.
oh
So don't worry, you didn't miss anything.
oh good, good.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that.
Anything else?
You're doing a great job with your outreach program, Carolina. I was thinking about that earlier when Natalie was asking questions because it's so important, so critically important for people to understand all of the aspects of water quality issues that are going on, especially when we think about the flooding events that are happening. We've been working on flood resiliency advocacy in both Raleigh and DC this past year, and so folks just I think they understand when we have a hurricane event, but they don't understand the daily contaminants that get in the water and the importance of understanding stormwater runoff and the impacts of construction and good forestry management, all of those combined and what that means to. So thank you for doing all that outreach.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think it is important, and yeah, like you said, it's really important to understand the connections between all those things. And that's a cool thing about the tree project that we're doing with students is that primarily it's about trees, but we have a whole day about water, just talking about how trees affect water quality and improve that. And a lot of kids don't realize that at that age. So yeah. Yeah, and Natalie, if you ever want to collaborate on your environmental education things in Hickory, I'm happy to do that.
That's funny that you said that because I wrote that down. Follow up with Carolina. So I will reach out to you and we'll talk.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, Jason, I'll put it back to you if you have anything else to share.
No, fantastic. Always a great presentation. If Lloyd's still on here, the wonderful information. A lot of stuff, of course, probably goes over our heads, but very interesting. Also, of course, thank Carolina for everything she does. And, I hope that her and Natalie can get together and uh, talk about how the city of Hickory, how we do our public education and outreach, and maybe she can, help with that as well. But anyway, just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you next March. So we'll close this meeting.
Thanks
All right,
everyone
thank
for
you so
coming.
much.
I'm sorry.